Hello, my name is Amy Williams, and this is my culturally responsive mission statement for my future career as Executive Director of Wise Wonders Children's Science and Discovery Center. I am currently the manager of this museum and science center, and I'm completing my degree as part of the requirements for promotion to Executive Director. The first part of my mission statement deals with the types of learners and hidden curriculum. As future executive director of the Science Center, my goal is to cultivate a culture where acceptance is the norm, inclusivity is defended, and learning takes precedence over any external divisor. I want to create a community that causes everyone, regardless of any divisors, to learn, perhaps without even realizing it. I want all patrons to be welcome and to feel comfortable playing, being silly, and learning. All patrons deserve a quality, equitable, educational experience that is safe, welcoming, and void of any negative hidden curriculums. When I was considering the types of learners, inclusivity, and acceptance in the context of a science museum, I wanted to make sure that the changes that I make ensure that at our museum, STEM is for everyone. Only through such change can science museums begin to live up to their potential as places that engage all visitors in informal science learning and help all individuals feel that learning about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is for them. That quote is from Reich in 2012. Science careers have often been stereotyped as attainable only for a certain demographic of the population. I want to strive to counter this idea by creating an environment where science is for everyone, regardless of ability, race, gender, culture, or any difference for that matter. As well as helping everyone to see how STEM is for them, I want our museum to be a force field against discrimination. It's very important that we are intentional with the hidden curriculums presented in our programming. We want them to boldly state that everyone matters here. I plan to do this by thoughtfully incorporating a variety of voices and perspectives and representations. Which leads us to places, spaces, and material cultures. Creating an inclusive, literature-rich, comfortable environment for the students that visit the museum is an important part of my current role as manager and my future role as executive director. I will strive to be intentional with the layouts of our learning environment and cognizant of the materials introduced into the environment to ensure that they support the desired elements of our learning culture. The physical surroundings of a learning environment can be perhaps one of the most influential. However, it often receives very little intentional thought. Most of the time, we're just putting stuff where it's out of the way. But in the book Special Places, Special People by Wendy Tipman, she explains that in a study by Louis Chwala, physical factors alone were insufficient as determinants of environmental memory because social, cultural, and personal factors were equally significant, and that the key element for children relates to the extent at which they engender a sense of belonging. That was Titman, 1994. This is what I want to have in mind when creating an environment that is inclusive. I want to take into consideration the cultural, ethnic, religious, political, and abled uniqueness of our museum patrons. It is important that the things in our space create a sense of belonging for our patrons. They won't be able to feel that science is for them if they don't have a sense of belonging. We know that material culture is an integral part of the process of socialization and enculturation, Johnson, 1980. So it will be important to frequently evaluate the materials used in our exhibit and programming to ensure that we're promoting culturally responsive learning. This includes the literature, the signs, the words that are in our museum. Words are so powerful, and we want to make sure that we promote STEM literacy with a variety of voices and perspectives. Lastly, I'll strive to make my museum spaces safe and inviting. I love the quote from Titman, 1994, that says, Children are part of society, and they have a right to expect that the environment in which they grow up takes at least some account of their existence and particular needs. This is so important in the museum because we can create the best exhibits and have the most interesting displays. But if the children cannot interact with them, if they don't take into account, the physical needs of children, the mental, emotional needs of children, then they will be completely lost to the children and we will not accomplish anything that we are striving for. And what we're striving for is to close the achievement gap and eliminate cultural bias. It's my goal to lead STEM and STEAM initiatives within my larger community in a manner that seeks to eliminate cultural bias and overcome socioeconomic stereotypes. We want to encourage parental and community involvement and provide engaging and challenging experiences across all curriculum for all students and families. According to Amy Marcos in 2016, the achievement gap refers to the disparity of achievement between various student groups, especially those students that differ in socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, and gender. One of the steps to closing this achievement gap is to begin to overcome socioeconomic stereotypes and ethnic stereotypes. To do this, we must begin to identify cultural misconceptions and actively work to debunk them. Again, according to Amy Marcos, 2016, it is a common misconception that ethnic groups vary in terms of intelligence, inherent drive, or how much they value education. In our science programming, I want to not only correct these stereotypes as they rise, but to seek out instances where these stereotypes live in our programming and eradicate them. Students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or marginalized groups are at risk for navigating a school environment that is set up for their easy success or their even easier failure. We read a study that talked about how students in different schools with different socioeconomic demographics held their students to different standards. Oftentimes, we will make things easier for the kids that we think need that. And that is a disservice to them because they are succeeding, but they're not actually learning. So we want to strive to create a challenging yet accessible family STEM learning opportunity. In doing this, we're going to encourage our parents to become co-learners with their children, and we're going to create a community of people dedicated to the success of our children. One thing that can create a disparity in success is culture as disability. So at the museum, we are going to work on mitigating culture as disability, and we're going to interpret cultural conflicts as they arise. The main goal of the Children's Science and Discovery Center is to make STEM accessible to all members of the community. As future executive director, I will strive to provide students with every help necessary to see them succeed. This includes taking into account cultural differences that may arise within our programming, as well as creating opportunity for conflict resolution using culturally sensitive methods.
Because my mom never used baby.
By recruiting community members from diverse backgrounds, especially those of Latino or Native communities, to work with us in developing programming will allow us to do, as Julia Comea suggests, that we work collaboratively with Native allies, listen closely to their wisdom as well as their concerns, interrogate unearned power and privilege, including one's own, and use this privilege to confront opposition and stand behind Natives so that their voices can be heard. That was from Comea in 2009. My community has a large makeup of Native American and Latino communities. It's very important that we turn to those communities to help us face cultural diversity instead of trying to hide from it, and harness cultural diversity so that everyone in our community can learn from each other and with each other. An important part of cultural learning is pop culture and core rituals. As future executive director and current manager of the Children's Science Center, I will actively incorporate pop culture into our program as appropriate to entice patrons to participate in educational endeavors using popular and common grounds as starting points. I will also be cognizant of the impact of holidays, symbols, and core rituals have on the participation of a diverse group of patrons, seeking to include these things within our programming in a manner that is culturally sensitive. I want to create a learning environment that positively embraces things in pop culture as well as mitigates the negatives that can arise from pop culture. It's a delicate balance and an interesting dance. According to Tim Delaney of philosophynow.org, pop culture is defined as the culture of the people. Pop culture is determined by the interactions of people in their everyday activities. Style of dress, the use of slang, grading rituals, and the food that people eat are all examples of popular culture. That's from Delaney, 2007. Our museum already operates under the ideology that learning should be fun. One of our core values is creating an environment where patrons are so busy playing that they don't realize they're learning. However, we do not intentionally work to incorporate elements of pop culture. By incorporating pop culture into our exhibits and programming, it's not just a useful tool for engagement, but can also help develop important STEM skills, such as critical thinking and analysis. Within the museum, we use holidays and popular events and symbols to change up our exhibits and our programming. We try to be sensitive to the different belief systems and cultures of our patrons, but still recognize the importance of these elements of pop culture and how they enhance the lives of children and families that visit our center. Integrating these core rituals and symbols is vital to the inclusion of all people in our center. Which brings us to culturally responsive pedagogy. The Children's Science Center will strive to operate from a culturally responsive teaching approach, understanding that our patrons come from all walks of life and cultural backgrounds. We will strive to get to know our constituents as individuals and develop exhibits and programming that integrates a variety of cultural norms, representations, and learning styles. STEM subjects tend to be viewed as the toughest subject to integrate culturally responsive teaching. However, when operating from the understanding that multiculturalism reaches far beyond unit studies of ethnic groups or one-off representations of token ethnic members of STEM disciplines, we can develop programming that is culturally responsive by following the 5 dimensions of multicultural learning. According to Banks, multidimensional teaching is not stereotyping learners based on learning type or cultural normatives. It is teachers modifying their teaching style so that they use a wide range of strategies and teaching techniques such as cooperative groups, simulations, role-playing, and discovery. And that's from 1998. Our museum is already well on its way to integrating all of those teaching techniques. Our museum is all about collaborative learning, simulations. How do we create small scale things of very large concepts, role playing, and discovery. So we are well on our way. The first step to reaching multidimensional teaching in the museum is to evaluate our own understandings. Dr. James Banks says, I think teachers must start with the process of self-transformation, a process of reading, a process of engaging with others, a process of understanding that the other is us and we are the other. I love that quote. We need to actually get to know our patrons. Learning about your students' cultures can help you to understand their funds of knowledge. We need to mitigate the requirements of prior knowledge that patrons need to have to actively participate in our programming and exhibits. We cannot do this if we don't have a basic knowledge of our students' funds of knowledge. So once we have done these steps, we will be able to incorporate diverse voices and cultures in meaningful ways in order to create exhibits and programming that all of our patrons can meaningfully engage in. Thank you so much for letting me share my culturally responsive mission statement to you. I hope that it gives you a better understanding of my goals and my desires as executive director of the Children's Museum. Thank you.